Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being patient. It is 4:05 and we see a few more people streaming in, but it's okay. We will begin. Once again, this is part 3 of our e-commerce webinar. If you have not seen our part 1 and part 2, and if you are keen, please feel free to check out Osame's LinkedIn and Facebook page, where the webinar for part 1 and 2 is available on demand. So just register if you're interested, and you get immediate access to part 1 and part 2 of the webinar. All right, so for today, part 3, what we are going to talk about, all right, is one of the most exciting portions of any business, which is all about scaling, either scaling it in locally where you are, or scale internationally, be it in Asia, UK, EU, depending on where you are residing right now. So with us today, we have a few very exciting speakers. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce to you from Estonia, e-Residency, Elaine. Right, so Elaine, could you just share with us a bit about yourself and a bit about e-Residency Estonia?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ülan and I work the e-Residency team of Estonia. Estonia is a tiny country in Northern Europe. We have only 1.3 million people, but we are known to be, just like Singapore, known to be quite entrepreneurial and very techy. We have produced 7 startups that are worth more than 1 billion euros. So that's a pretty nice achievement for a tiny country. And we have introduced a program called e-Residency 6 years ago. I lead the business development team at e-Residency, and what it does is it gives you basically a digital identification card for Estonia. It's a government issued ID. Estonia is part of the European Union, so anyone with this card can basically start the company online without any paperwork, without any hassle, without ever showing up in Estonia, because we don't have very good flight connections, unlike Singapore.
Great, thank you so much, Elaine. Okay, next up, we have Sean from hoolah. Sean, could you share?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Tan. I'm the general manager of hoolah for Singapore and Hong Kong currently. For those that are not familiar with hoolah is actually a buy now, pay later ecosystem. We are the largest in Asia. Currently, we are in countries in Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and we're looking to expand into Indonesia, Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. So very exciting time. It's a fast growing company. We are 3 years old. Buy now, pay later is actually quite relatively new concept in Asia, especially. We have seen the industry have seen success in places like Europe and in Australia and the States. So we are one of the first pioneers actually to bring the buy now, pay later concept into Asia.
Awesome, thanks, Sean. And last but not least, we have Adam from Osome. Adam, please.
Hello, thanks, Daryl. So my name is Adam. I'm the head of partnerships in Singapore here in Osome. And I've been in the industry for like about 5 to 6 years, and I've been very fortunate to, really advise thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners, right? Basically about how to start a business and how to, basically effective business management. And Osome is really a one-stop solution, right, for corporate services. So we provide services like corporate secretarial services, accounting, tax, payroll, so on and so forth. We are available in Singapore, Hong Kong, and the UK. And more recently, we are focusing a lot on e-commerce, right? Because, as the webinar suggests, right, e-commerce is something that is, I think, very relevant now. And so we are focusing on that. And we are hoping to really bring value to e-commerce owners, whether new or existing ones. And even if they want to scale, right, I think we hope to bring value to them as well.
Hey, thanks, Adam. Okay, hold on. Right, so I think when we talk about scaling a business, right, the first few things that come to mind is easily like, marketing, hiring more people, innovation, doing new products and all that. But one of the least talked about ways of scaling a business is actually about partnerships, right? So today, I think we would just want to focus a little bit more about partnerships, because if you want to talk about the rest of the stuff, I'm sure you can find many, many resources out there. Yeah, but today we just want to focus on partnerships. So when we talk about partnerships, right, the first thing we want to know is, or at least for me, right, I want to find out, or at least understand better, like how does one define partnership? So what exactly is a partnership in terms of like scaling a business, right? Is it more than just like, I partner with you and then we sell something so I get more revenue for myself? Or is it something more than that? Adam, since you're the head of partnerships, you want to start the ball rolling with this question?
Well, thanks for letting me start the ball rolling. Okay, so the thing, how I see partnerships, it's very different from sales, right? Sales, someone comes to you with a need, and you just sell them your services whatsoever. But I think for partnerships, the challenge and the good thing about partnerships is being able to find a partnership that's like a win-win situation. So hoolah and ourselves actually, so Sean was just asking earlier, how do we find about hoolah? So actually we were approached, we kind of got connected, right, for the Hong Kong team. So our Hong Kong team is actually partnering on something. And then, so in Singapore, we should explore that as well. And we are doing that. So, and I think being able to find that win-win situation for both, right, is something that I feel is important in a partnership. And then some people might be wondering, hey, Osome is available in the UK as well. How about Estonia? Isn't that like, something that is, can a partnership happen, right? And I think I had a discussion with Elaine as well, right? That, Estonia is in the EU and well, UK after Brexit and everything. So UK is just by itself. So in a way, I think we are all working together, right? And I think that's what's really important to me in partnerships, really. It's all about finding a win-win situation. So in terms of scaling your business, right, locally or globally, is about finding partners who are, on the same track as you, the same kind of mindset, and a potential for a win-win situation. There are times where I have partners who are more traditional, and then they come to me like, hey Adam, you know what, I don't need to learn any new technology anymore. I'm good where I am. So in cases like this, I think it's a bit harder. So it's really to find someone or a company or a partner who has the same kind of mindset, same kind of growth mindset, right? Especially if you're looking at scaling, and then really work things out and find a win-win situation. That's my take on it.
Hey, thanks, Adam. I love what you shared. Like, it is a win-win situation. Like, you're not here to make your potential partner lose money or be at a disadvantage at your own advantage, right? So, that's the idea of a partner, right? You're in this together. I really like that sharing. Sean, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think since the topic is around scaling your e-commerce business, right? So you actually people forget that partnership is a very key, important component in your go-to-market strategy. And a lot of people kind of talk about, sales and marketing and what you need to do in order to go in the market, and kind of forget partnership can be key. Partnership can also kind of help you enter new geographical locations, right? With a strategic partnership. I think that's the thing that as e-commerce players, those are the things that we need to consider. I think Adam hit it on the nail. I think generally, it has to be a mutually beneficial environment. It's not a monetary transaction. So a lot of this relationship you form, you should have a view of it being a long-term relationship, right? And a lot of these relationships are really kind of, to say, symbolic, and also kind of established in good faith. Because a lot of things that you guys want to do, like be supportive of each other's activities, might not drive you personally some stuff, but it can build that relationship, and you never know what you're going to get out from it in the long run. So apart from just establishing, just say, okay, this is what I'm going to get from a partner, and this is what I'm going to get from a partner, there are other more interested things that are happening in the ecosystem that you can benefit from, right? Partnership actually allows you to not just tap into not tap into customers or consumer base, but also the network that your partners have. And that could be bringing you other partners that could be beneficial in the long run, bring you investors as such. So those considerations needs to be much more holistic when you define partnership, and what does it actually bring to the table for you.
Hey, thanks, Sean. Yeah, I think the keyword that stood out for me that was a bit different was the word network, right? Like, at least for me, when I think partner, is just, okay, what can I get out? Let's say, for example, I partner with Adam. Okay, what can I get out of Adam? Like, what can he immediately, right, give me a benefit, and what benefit can I immediately give it to him, right? But one thing that we all don't really notice, which is not, I think it's because it's not directly in front of our faces, that's why we don't really see that clearly, is that the network and the relationship that your partner might have built with other people could be beneficial to you as well. Yeah, and that is one very key point in building an effective partnership to scale a business, because like you mentioned, right, other partners that could be beneficial to you as well, or even investors, right, which is also a very key component if you want to scale your business, especially if you are looking to scale it internationally, which requires a lot more, not just investment, right, but a lot more time and effort, and many other things which Elaine can share with us as well. So Elaine, any thoughts on partnerships and scaling a business? Any thoughts along these lines?
Yeah, actually, I have two main thoughts that I wanted to share. When you were speaking, Adam, I was thinking, a government or a jurisdiction or a country can also be a partner to a business. And I mean, there are countries that are less business friendly and make the life of the entrepreneur as hard as they can with their paperwork and different procedures that you have to go through. And then there are countries like Singapore, right, that welcomes a lot of the businesses to come and register there, and is super popular all across the Southeast Asian region. And Estonia is the same way, that we want to be business friendly, and we have set up since the 90s a country from scratch, because you used to be part of the Soviet Union, right? So we set up our country from scratch, and right away thought about, okay, like how can we make this country, so small as it is, open, first of all, to business around it, to attract direct investments, and also make the procedures so simple. And we decided to go with digitalization. So every public sector service in Estonia is digitally accessible. You do everything online. There are literally only two things in Estonia that you cannot currently do online. These are getting married and getting divorced. Everything that has to do with your business. I think back in 2000 and maybe 4 or 5, when I registered my first company, then I remember that I think getting a VAT number still required you to show up at the tax office. But ever since, I have not seen, in running my business, a government official face to face. I declare my taxes online. Every permit, every license, every document that I ever need, it's all digitally signed and digitally submitted. So a government can also be your partner in that sense, that and business votes with their feet, right? They go where they are expected. They go to Singapore, they go to Delaware, they go to Estonia. So a government can also be a partner. And the second thought that I wanted to share is that ecosystem is super important. So when you're creating a service, then building some kind of an ecosystem around you that helps you provide that service better is really important. And we have viewed this the same way at e-Residency, because when we first started giving out e-Residency to non-residents to come and bring their business to Estonia, then at some point we realized that we cannot do this alone. We cannot do this without private sector. So we included a lot of partners. We work with different fintechs that provide payment. They provide business banking, and they provide business payment services, so that you can take credit cards and whatnot. So we included a lot of those and made sure that they know about e-Residency and that they know that these businesses are legit. And we included a lot of private sector companies to service those companies with accounting. And so ecosystem is super important, was my second thought.
Can I just jump in here and ask a question? Was it a very conscious strategy from the Estonian government to kind of invest in the infrastructure and push things digitally?
It was very much a conscious decision, because when you start off from a place where you have nothing, you have no laws, you have no nothing, right? So it was a time when a lot of very young people were leading this country. We are known to have one of the youngest prime ministers in history. I think our first prime minister was 32 when he came to power, and these were all young people. So they set their eyes on this future right away, and we had this massive program in the middle of 90s that was called tiger's leap, I think, in English. So it meant basically bringing computers into schools, bringing computers into every like public library, so that people would start adopting this digital lifestyle. So a lot of decisions were made right early on. I think it was a conscious decision.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, very interesting. Definitely. Thanks, Elaine, for sharing. I think along the lines you mentioned earlier that for e-residency to make, okay, not that e-residency isn't legit. Sorry, let me rephrase it better. To continue to expand on e-residency, to let other people be aware of e-residency. You mentioned that there were a lot of people that reached out to, like credit card companies for payment online and accounting. Building an entire ecosystem, right? So I imagine that there are a lot of different industries and different partners that you had to reach out to and to work with. So then the question is, how do you approach them? How do you get them? So what were the ways in which you approach these partners? Were there any like tips that you could share with us on how do you approach this? Because I mean, back then e-residency was an entirely new thing, right? Yeah, and hence getting partners in may not be the easiest because there is no credibility in that sense.
Yeah, definitely, and it goes back to this win-win, right? So we hope that this program is really bringing business to Estonia, and we have this like sort of like growth projection, in our minds, and our job is to sell this as something that will bring more business to all these private sector partners as well. So like the more foreigners come to Estonia, have their business there, not physically come, but just bring their business to Estonia, the more the local economy actually will win from this as well, right? So it is really a win-win situation, and the same way with international fintechs. If the best models and the best industries that e-residency suits for are those that are quite digital to begin with, like e-commerce and different digital services. Like we've always been very popular among companies that don't have any like physical production unit somewhere, right? So if these are the sectors, then there is a really good connection point with payment services, right? Like they also service digital businesses. So win-win.
Yep, love that win-win. Adam, any thoughts on any different ways to get partners, or how is even partnership crucial to scaling, in this case, since this topic is about e-commerce, scaling e-commerce business?
Well, I think Sean mentioned that earlier, about like how important partnership is in scaling, right? And a lot of people think about just sales and marketing. And, as a company grows, you will realize that, hey, the client acquisition cost, right, for marketing is going to be a lot higher than if you do partnerships, right? So definitely in terms of scaling, right, whatever business it is, right, especially like e-commerce, because then, well, technically there should be no boundaries, right? So then I think partnerships is all the more important. But then on the question about, how do you look for partners? I think in the different stages, right, of a company, I think there are different challenges, right? Because when the company is new, right, just like Elaine mentioned about when Estonia was just starting up, right? What can you show? What can you bring to the table for partners, right? In order to really provide a win-win situation. So I think at the beginning, it's really all about, reaching out within your network, which was mentioned earlier as well, right? And network is very important. Ecosystem was mentioned earlier as well. I think that's very important at the beginning to start reaching out first, right? And I think what we noticed also is that at the beginning, looking for partners right at the beginning is a bit more challenging, right? You will need to look for partners who may be also, going through the same thing as you. But then as the company grows, I think then the challenge is in finding the right partner, because then when you grow to a certain stage, everybody will come to you and say, hey, I want to be your partner. But at that point in time, right, you may want to be a bit more selective about who you partner with, right? Again, going back to what I mentioned earlier about having the same mindset, right? So I think that's how I look at partnerships and why is it important, and how do you really go look around for partners.
Okay, thanks, Adam. So, Sean, on the same topic, right? I mean, as the rest of the speakers also mentioned, you also mentioned that ultimately it's all about a win-win situation. So, in this case, if let's say you are in e-commerce space, what are some tips that you can give to the e-commerce owners, right? On what are some tips you can give e-commerce owners on positioning themselves properly to set themselves apart?
I think, in order for you to kind of look at partnership, and Adam kind of talk about it, looking at different partners at different stages of your business. I think the mindset you go into partnership is also kind of a prerequisite, because a lot of time when we look at partnership, obviously the needs of of your target consumer audience that both the business or partners share. I think that's an obvious place most people would start looking for partners, either through marketing or network or whatever other means. But there are sometimes, in a lot of times when in the business that I've come across, some of the most magical and most powerful partnerships are actually forged when they are not very obvious partners. When you look at them, they are not obviously have the same relationship as you. You don't obviously have the same consumer segment as you, but they might bring other values like technological capabilities or internal resources or capabilities that you're unable to build, but your partners actually have them. So then how do you kind of work around it, right? So the key proposition around, and back to your question, Daryl, on key propositioning around, what are what you bring to the table, sometimes can be skewed because of understanding what the other party can bring to the table for you, and kind of relook into how that partnership should evolve, and always have a long-term view in terms of partnership. Don't look at what you're going to get now from them, right? It's not just going to be, I know a lot of people look at partnership and say, oh, we can do a mutual email blast and do some barter trade. I mean, that's very old school partnership. We don't do that very much anymore, but you need to look at it from a long-term perspective and be able to build those relationships. So a lot of times when it comes to articulating your proposition, it should focus on both the short-term needs being met, but also have a view of the partnership, how it evolves together with your business, and understand how the other person's business is evolving, and try to create synergy on a longer run.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I love that it's not just about a short-term view, but also the long-term perspective on what you guys can do moving forward. You also mentioned earlier that there were, one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that most powerful partnerships actually stem from places that you don't really expect it to happen. Is there an example that you have seen that maybe you can share with us?
So for example, I think at hoolah there are some partners, obviously, with the payment service players. Those are obvious partnerships. We have also explored partnerships with logistic players, and they service e-commerce. Yes, we have the same part of merchants, but because if we were to power those services together, it becomes a value add, and something that e-commerce should kind of think about, right? Because it enhances your services to the merchants. And a lot of times when you kind of say payments and logistics don't really kind of come together, but actually there are a lot of synergies because of the common consumer pool or the customer pool or whatever that is. You need to kind of deep dive a bit more.
Wow, that's good. That's good. So in a nutshell, it's really to think not just about your business as a whole, but the industry that you're servicing. Yeah, and see how, as a company or as your company and partners, how we can better service the entire industry and value add to whoever is taking up or whoever's in the industry. In this case, the consumers. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, moving on to the next part of this webinar, right? We talk about scaling also. So the thing about scaling, the moment you scale a business, it's not just really about more profits coming in, right? It's not just about selling more things in the e-commerce space, selling more things, reaching out to more people, entering new markets and all that. But a lot of times when you scale, your operations scale as well, right? In terms of your logistics, your deliveries, your accounts, all these scale along with your money, whether you like it or not, right? These are all part and parcel of key operations in business, right? So in this case, right, the next question I'm going to ask is that a lot of times we want to scale, but we may not have the necessary operational knowledge, like in terms of like accounts or like logistics, etc. in the e-commerce space. So one option is for people to outsource, but yet some people may not be too comfortable with the option because it means extra costs going out, right? So first, I think the first question to ask, right? Maybe Adam, you can answer this is how does outsourcing actually help a company that is planning to scale? Like, are there key benefits to doing so, or is it just really like a waste of money or resources in a sense?
Okay, I think the question to the individual business owners or anyone, right, is what do you really want to focus on, right? Do you want to focus on maybe cost savings for now, or you want to focus on growth, right? Because I imagine most businesses that I imagine would want to focus on growing, right? To grow as big as they can, right? And with that, then it is definitely important, right, to really outsource certain things that you're not necessarily great at, right? I mean, the business is yours, you have the idea, you know what to sell, maybe because you online shop a lot, and then you know where to scale into because hey, these are the countries where people buy a lot from, right? Of your products, for example. But then maybe you're like, hey, I'm not an accountant by training, I don't have logistic partners. So outsourcing all this would allow you to focus on what is important to you. So again, the question is what is important to the individual? If your focus would be say, hey, I want to focus on growing the company, then let's focus on that. And then anything else, I can just outsource it, right? And if let's say my focus is on cost savings, then maybe it's a different story altogether, right? But as I said, if most companies were to focus on growth, then outsourcing all these administrative tasks would be important, right? And working with the right partners, going back to what we were discussing earlier, working with the right partners with, well, their own network of partners will be important as well, right? As Sean mentioned about them working with logistic partners, which means to say that you could reach out to one great partner, right? And they could link you with many other great partners that they've been working with already. So they kind of have filtered for you the partners you should be working with so that you can focus on what is really important to you, which I assume most businesses would focus on wanting to grow, making more money and stuff like that. So and that's why I see, the correlation between, outsourcing and scaling effectively.
Hey, thanks, Adam. You also mentioned just now, I mean, when you talk about scaling, right? Looking for like different partners. I mean, and you mentioned Sean just now, or rather hoolah in a sense. And Sean, you also mentioned hoolah. You also have many different partners also in the logistics space and all that. But before that, right? I mean, you guys are ultimately a payment solutions provider, right? And you also mentioned earlier, before in the early parts of the webinar, that buy now pay later, especially in the Asia region, is still very new, right? So how does buy now pay later work, especially for e-commerce space, and how does in the sense hoolah really effectively help, right, an e-commerce business scale?
Okay, then perhaps then I need to kind of define buy now pay later, the ecosystem at the industry
Yes,
at this point. So I think buy now pay later obviously is booming, and APAC is probably looking to be the fastest growing region for buy now pay later. I think just from a sheer number of mobile internet users in the region, right? So I think one thing I think the reason why buy now pay later is such a big thing is because it actually benefits both the consumers and the merchants. And I can talk about some of the benefits. From a consumer side, obviously, it is very flexible, right? So they don't have to be tied into a single financial institution to use the solution. It works on both debit and credit cards. So can you imagine a lot of third world countries in Southeast Asia that doesn't have credit? A lot of them do not have credit services. They're able to use it for e-commerces or buying things in person in the shops. The other thing is, I think.
Oh no, did Sean get disconnected?
I think for a bit, maybe.
Yeah, I think he might have been disconnected. I think he's coming back. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, give us a minute. Some technical difficulties. Yeah, at this point, I wish there was like a nice background music.
Well, buy now pay later is something that's definitely on the rise. I've been reading a lot about buy now pay later.
It's a bit embarrassing. I forgotten to plug in my power, so that was definitely a lapse in judgment.
It's okay, Sean.
Literally. Sorry, where was I? in terms of I don't know what you guys miss actually. I was talking about the consumer benefits, obviously.
Yep.
Then obviously from a merchant perspective, there are also lots of benefits. Actually, merchants should not look at BNPL as another payment method. Actually, it is a marketing vehicle and marketing solution, because what BNPL does is actually drives new customers segment for you. It helps you to reduce your cart abandonment rate and also increase your basket sizes. And that's what actually BNPL, the full effect of BNPL can have on your e-commerce platform if you implement BNPL correctly. For example, I think Sennheiser is one of our clients in Singapore, and traditionally Sennheiser attracts a slightly older market segment, but they wanted to roll out equipments to kind of attract more younger audience, and they didn't really know how. So we actually had a chat with them and talk about using BNPL as a solution, but not as a payment solution, but as a marketing solution. And they did very well within the next few launches. We have increased their business from the youth segment, particularly from the young millennial segment, quite incredibly. So that's one of the things about BNPL, the conception of BNPL, because a lot of people think BNPL is just a payment service and a payment platform or payment solution. It is actually more than that. So I just want to put it out there.
Okay, thanks, Sean, for clarifying. So, in that sense, right? Sorry, I lost my train of thought here.
I take that as my fault because I created the loss of train.
No worries. Okay. Okay, sorry, I really lost my train of thought. Give me a minute.
Do you mind if I jump in and add something to the previous two?
Please.
Sean was talking about the payment providers, and Adam was talking about also logistics partners and whatnot. And one of the things that I think is a big obstacle in expanding your business and scaling your business internationally is also the compliance, right? So for example, for a small business to expand to certain markets, there's this big step you need to take to be certain that you're actually compliant in those markets, that you're charging the taxes that you're supposed to charge, and figuring this all out is sometimes way more than a small business owner can actually take, and that comes back to this, what should you outsource? You should definitely outsource things that are not your strong points, and the things that are not your core business. So for example, to sell to the US compared to selling to the EU, the US is just like one big market with the same language, with the same type of consumer, and then you're looking at European Union where you have supposedly a single market, but it's actually a lot of different languages, a lot of different tax rates, and it's so much headache. Now we're at least moving towards a more simplified system with these new changes that came into force on July 1st, that it's actually possible now to have one VAT number in one country and declare VAT through one country, so that you charge according to where your customers are, but you declare and you pay through just one country, and then it's distributed to the other countries. So things like that are hopefully going to make things easier for business owners, but it's this compliance side and this tax side is that definitely one thing where a lot of businesses, I think, stop and go like, okay, maybe we can somehow penetrate our existing markets better instead of scaling globally or instead of scaling internationally, because it seems like such a huge deal to figure this out.
I think I can definitely add a bit to that because I think, and I'm talking about hoolah itself, right? Because we're expanding in various markets, and for us, having partners that kind of, as Elaine has said, talk about understanding compliance, talk about legal requirements. We are not the experts in it, so a lot of times we have partners that kind of help us understand the market, right? So it's interesting because in Singapore right now, in the markets that we're in, for example, we currently split the payments by 3. So as a consumer, you can buy an item and split your payments into 3, but that might not work for all the markets. So for example, if you look at Philippines market, they get paid twice a month. So in that market, then the payment method, then the payment flow might not actually work. And to understand the legal framework and the legal requirement from all the monetary authorities in the region, it's taxing. It's amazing because they themselves don't understand buy now, pay later as a concept. So a lot of time is education and having conversation with them, but you need a partner to kind of facilitate that as well. So I totally agree with Elaine's point of view.
Yeah, thanks. That's great sharing. Adam, any thoughts on this? You look like you have thoughts.
No, I mean, I was just enjoying listening to the conversation and then you trying to catch your thoughts as well.
Actually,
just
remembered one more thing that I think is very much connected to what we spoke about earlier, is that if you're looking for partners, then look at where your partners are like also going or where they're headed to, right? And like one of the things I think is super important nowadays is that how many technology-based connections, different tools that you use in different partners and marketplaces can use between themselves, right? Because when everything is integrated, this is taking this admin load off of the entrepreneur. You don't have to do all that yourself because technology can do that for you. So when you're also like choosing different services and different partners, then one of the things that you should also be looking at is like, what is the level of these like API based connections, digital connections, between different services, and how easy it is to export some things and import other things to any system, right? And that's one of the things that is going to take you further in the future when you develop your business globally, because that's the handwork or all that stuff is removed from there.
Yeah, and kind of just adding on to everything as well, right? Well, going back to partners again, I think it's important to have someone who is local, right? So Sean mentioned about, hey, in Philippines and Singapore, it's just different, right? So our experience specifically, because we have a team in the UK and our focus is on e-commerce business, as I mentioned, right? And the partners that we reached out to, so we were looking at influencers, right? Marketing with influencers, right? And I think that's quite popular now, with TikTok and everything, right? So we realized that in UK, there are a lot of influencers that really talk about e-commerce, how to grow your e-commerce business. In Singapore, there isn't a lot. In fact, there's probably just a handful, or maybe even 1 or 2, right? That really just talks about e-commerce, right? As to engage their clients, right? Engage their audiences. So I think it's important, wherever that you want to expand into, that you really have a partner who is there, or who are already there, or who are going there, or as far as possible, if the partner is already there, I think it'd be really helpful, because then they can already kind of give you a rough idea, or they can help you with understanding the market as well. And I think that's something that is also important. When you think about scaling.
Yeah, I agree with Adam there, because localization is key, because just like Europe, right, Southeast Asia, every country has different cultural background, every different ecosystem. I think the localization piece actually has a commercial value, because it helps you reduce your cost of acquisition and your cost of operation and create a much more effective business and efficient business for you. So then from a monetary perspective, it's actually beneficial from a business perspective, not just on a cultural perspective, understanding market. I think all those are of course good to have, but at the end of the day, it does impact bottom line about when you consider who you partner with or who you work with.
Yeah, but love that. It all boils down to really the kind of partners that you're working with, and really how do you really effectively like I said earlier, how do you effectively work together, right, to really benefit not just each other, but the industry as a whole? Yeah. Elaine, I have one question for you. This is really curious. I mean, you mentioned earlier that as of July, right, the VAT system in EU is going to be, for lack of better words, a bit more centralized, right? Like you can sell to many different people across EU, but you only declare it in one country, right? So I imagine that really saves a lot of trouble. With that change, how has the e-commerce space changed since then, or do you predict any major changes in the e-commerce space in EU?
So the thing is that these changes are super new still, right? Like it's now mid-August,
About a month,
they
yeah.
just came. Well, it's 1.5 months, right? So one of the things that changed is that the system that was available earlier for digital products, called mini one-stop shop for VAT declaring, became available for also physical goods. That was the main change, and we call it one-stop shop for VAT, and that means that you can do it through one country, right? And in this process of implementing this regulation, that all the countries have to make this possible for businesses registered in their country or paying taxes in their country. In this process, like we didn't even know like how the different member states are going to approach this. So we were looking for information, like trying to understand like whether all countries are actually going to be ready on July 1st, and even that wasn't like 100% sure before, and not all countries have tax declaring systems so easily accessible online. Sometimes it's all in a local language. You don't even have it in English for the non-resident businesses. So I think this was like one of the moments where I thought, okay, like Estonia has a really good chance here to actually be this magnet for businesses, because we have had our tax declarations online since 2000. So it's something that is really, really, really easy here, and registering for this one-stop shop through Estonia is so much less hassle than doing it in some other big European Union country, where getting a VAT number may take weeks and sometimes even months from what I hear. So in Estonia, you register a business one day, at the same time you apply for the VAT number, and you get it in maximum 5 work days, usually less. So being in this situation where all the countries have to be open to this and have to provide this to businesses, but we know that we were ready already in February, basically, with like a beta version of this OSS. So that's been kind of an interesting thing to observe and watch. But what happens for the businesses from outside of European Union, though, is that you can view this change positively. You can view this change actually quite negatively as well. So one of the things that was available for non-EU businesses before was that if you shipped something in a consignment less than 22 euros to European Union, you didn't have to declare any VAT from this, right? And so one of the things that this was actually doing now is that, okay, like let's take this unfair advantage away from these businesses in Asia, shipping goods into Europe. But if you view this in a positive way, if your sales were big enough, and if your consignments were already like bigger than 22 euros anyway, and you had to pay taxes anyway, what you had to do is that you had to register in each country where you kept your goods, or where you had customers over a certain threshold of turnover, right? So now you could just do this through one country. So you can view this in 2 ways from your side, right?
Yeah, well, ultimately, to me, at least to my personal and humble opinion, right, I think it saves so much hassle, like just having to do everything through one country, rather than, I mean, imagine if you are a seller on Amazon, right, and there's so many. Amazon is has such a global reach, and if you're really literally selling a lot of things to many different countries, yeah, I can imagine the pain.
Well, what Amazon, though, what the other thing that changed with this OSS is that Amazon actually became a deemed seller according to the EU regulations. So Amazon, luckily, and a lot of other marketplaces, as far as I know, eBay for sure, what they do is that they are now forced to actually like be the deemed seller and charge the VAT, so that the sellers who are selling on Amazon, they don't have to worry about this at all, because Amazon is registered for this import one-stop shop, and so what they do is that you as a seller, you merely need to calculate this into your cost that you have to charge VAT, but you don't have to register anywhere, right? Like, so if you're selling consignments under 150 euros, Amazon will do everything for you. It's actually quite straightforward. But when you sell through your own web shops, when you sell through when you sell through places where the marketplace does not have to be the deemed seller, because they don't take care of your shipping or payment or anything like that. When you're selling through these kinds of channels, then you still might actually need to consider that having an EU entity might actually be more cost effective through Estonia than having to use some kind of a tax consultant or an advisor to do these registrations for you as a Singaporean company or a company from some other Southeast Asian country.
Right. Okay, understand. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's really helpful information for anybody who's even thinking about all this. I think the last question that I have, right, that was given to us to ask. I think this question can be for both Elaine and Sean. What are some tips to help a business gain international reach? Any thoughts on this? Any tips?
Maybe I can start. I think it goes back to localization, understanding the local markets. First, I think doing your research before you enter those markets, it's very critical. A lot of e-commerce players just think, oh, because some other e-commerce have been successful in this country, well, let me try, and it doesn't really have a plan of entry. Apart from the usual go-to-market situation and the research part is very important. Understanding what are the elements of the go-to-market that you need to focus on, because a lot of e-commerce businesses, you have your strengths and weaknesses, as we discussed previously. You can't do everything. You can't be good at everything. So understanding where you need help is important, so that you can then look for those help and be able to research and form partnerships or have somebody help you with those. So I think from a go-to-market perspective, a lot of people just look at a commercial or how to do marketing and just find a logistic partner locally. But without understanding a lot of the intricacy and the insights, consumer needs, consumer wants, understanding culturally how they work. Sometimes your consumer UX might not be suited for that country. Look at Singapore and Hong Kong. A lot of people compare Singapore and Hong Kong market quite equally. But if you look at the UX for Hong Kong e-commerce website versus Singapore e-commerce, is totally different. The needs and requirements are totally different. So having that understanding is important. So my advice at the end of the day, like when you explore and go into another market, is make sure you do your proper research. And do it very, very stringently and holistically before you even decide that's a good market to go in.
I would maybe propose a different way of looking at this. That
you totally disagree. I love
research.
that.
Research is definitely important, but having been an entrepreneur myself for 10 years, like one of the things that I really felt that I learned was when I transferred from a traditional offline business to building an online-based travel startup for some years. And one of the things that we later adopted from this experience of building a web platform into our regular offline business as well was this kind of mindset of very agile testing. So instead of doing this massive research, figure out ways how you can quickly just test whether something works or whether it doesn't work with very little investment. So moving on really quickly, improving your messaging or improving your product or your visuals of the products or whatever it is, but just like really quickly testing and seeing what the feedback is. And then changing accordingly is maybe sometimes a better approach than doing a really thorough, massive research plan. Does that make sense?
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, at the end of the day, we are startups, right? So being agile, being able to change your direction and learning from mistakes is important. I think what the research actually does is kind of give you a sense of the calculated risk that you're taking. I think that's important. But I totally agree. You have to try. You have to make mistakes and learn from them and tangent your business quickly and be able to move fast. I think I totally agree with you, Elaine.
Yeah, and just to add on there, Osome kind of went through that same stage, right? There is only that much research you can do. At the end of the day, you still have to kind of learn while doing it, right? I'm sure hoolah probably went through the same thing, right? You did as much research as you deem is okay. This is as much as I can get, but then I still have to do it, right? Because there is only doing and then adjusting along the way that we really learn. So I think, in terms of going back again to scaling, right, for any e-commerce, again, I think you have to do adequate research, right? Enough for you to have a certain sense of confidence at least. And because, you are new, you don't have ages, right? Sometimes the market you might be entering is just great for you to enter right now. But if you spend too much time on a certain thing and not actually doing it, then it might not be helpful. But if it's going to be, a market that, hey, it's a bit mature for the products that you're selling, then maybe you need to do a bit more research. How can I go about it, right? So that I can differentiate myself from someone else. So I think when scaling globally, right, across borders, I think a good amount of a good balance, right, of research and actually doing it, I think it's very important. How much, I don't think any one of us can say, oh, you have to do 50% of this, 50% of that, or like 80% or 20%. I think it's really up to the individual, right? And also depending on the market you're going into. And I think the products that you're selling also, it's important. So yeah, that's just, the thoughts that I have.
Yeah, running a startup is a combination of art and science, and you have to put two together in order to make things work.
A lot of greed too, yes.
Oh yes, definitely. That goes without saying. That's a given. If you don't have greed, don't do startups.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing your thoughts. I really loved hearing what you guys were sharing. Really loved your insights. Little different insights, even how different perspectives ultimately can still come together, right? And just really share your thoughts on the different matters, be it on partnerships, be it on scaling, be it in the EU. Really appreciate it, and I really hope that the participants have learned a lot. We were supposed to go for Q&A, but in view of time, we will skip that. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, at the end of this webinar, you will receive an email. And if you have any questions for the rest, with regards to what the respective speakers have shared, please feel free to drop them an email. Feel free to drop them a text, and we'll be more than happy to just answer your questions, answer your queries. Yep.